Thanks very much for coming. Let's begin. Tonight, we have the 5th Annual Litigation Awards Dinner. Jonathan Stein, and as chair of all 5 Litigation Awards Dinner, I welcome you with great pride to a prestigious gathering of our unique litigation community. Tonight, we add 2 extraordinary awardees to our core of great judges and litigators. In the past, we have honored Chief Justice Ron George on the eve of his retirement, then Presiding Justice Norm Epstein, then U.S. District Court Judge Christina Snyder, and last year, Judge Michael Nash, longtime supervising judge of the largest juvenile court system in the country. This year, we honor Presiding Justice Arthur Gilbert. Justice Gilbert brings the flair of a Renaissance man to his 33-year tenure on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Arthur has served as faculty member of the California Judicial College, chaired committees for the Judicial Council and California Judges Association both, and authored texts by the Rudder Group and CLE both. Art Gilbert is a longtime Daily Journal columnist and a jazz pianist with Gary Green's Big Band of Barristers and other groups. His father was a professional pianist who told Art, whatever you do, don't become a jazz musician. Speaking for Justice Gilbert will be retired Court of Appeals Justice Elwood Louie, now a respected litigator at Jones Day. His long public and private resume runs from his current service on Senator Feinstein's Judicial Selection Committee to his appointment by the California State Bar as Special Master for its disciplinary system, to his past presidency of the California Judges Association. Also speaking will be Helen Zukin of Kiesel Law, a widely recognized consumer attorney who has served as president of the Los Angeles Ethics Commission. Presenting Justice Gilbert with the Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence will be last year's recipient, Judge Michael Nash. After these succinct speakers, we quickly turn to the Excellence in Advocacy Award. In the past, we have honored Roman Silberfeld, head of the LA office of Robbins, Kaplan, Miller, and Cerisi, then Tom Girardi of the nationally known Girardi and Keese, then Marshall Grossman, partner in the LA office of Orrick, and last year Brown Green, the leader of Green, Brule, and Wheeler, and 2 generations of fine litigators there. This year, we are pleased to honor Tom Nolan. Tom has won over $1 billion in trial verdicts, including California's then largest jury award in the famous antitrust case Litton v. Honeywell. The former chief of fraud and special prosecutions at the U.S. Attorney's Office, he now chairs the West Coast litigation practice of Skadden Arps. Tom has tried virtually every type of business case from both plaintiffs and defendants' tables. Tom gives back as well. He has been honored with the State Bar President's Pro Bono Service Award, and for Inner City Law Center, he won the largest settlement ever in the field of California urban housing. Speaking for Tom Nolan will be Jack DeCanio, another Skadden litigator from the U.S. Attorney's Office, who now heads their Silicon Valley litigation practice. Also speaking will be Joanne Lichman, a widely respected business litigator in the Los Angeles office of Baker Hostetler. She helped prep U.S. Supreme Court Justices Ellen Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor for Senate confirmation. Presenting the Excellence in Advocacy Award will be last year's recipient, Brown Green. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Beverly Hills Bar President Linda Spiegel. Linda was president of the Barristers, the young lawyers wing of the Beverly Hills Bar. For the past 10 years, she has organized and led BHBA's annual U.S. Supreme Court trip. Linda's practice in Beverly Hills concentrates on real estate leasing, landlord-tenant, and purchase and sale matters. She is also a certified mediator. Before Linda begins, and Linda, you can come on up, let us thank Beverly Hills Bar CEO Mark Steinberg and his dedicated staff for our stylish dinner. You'll find that the foods are cut above similar evenings. We thank our very many generous sponsors and those who took out congratulatory announcements in our very healthy brochure tribute book. You should take a moment to look through it in the coming days. And of course, thank you to our previous honorees for their vital input and insight in connection with tonight's awards. Ladies and gentlemen, Beverly Hills Bar President Linda Spiegel.
Thank you, Jonathan. On behalf of the Beverly Hills Bar Association and its Board of Governors, I want to thank you and your committee for another outstanding Litigation Awards dinner. I'd also like to add my congratulations to our two honorees, Justice Arthur Gilbert and Thomas Nolan, on whom we are thrilled to shine a well-deserved spotlight on such tremendously talented and respected legal icons. And we're very pleased that there are so many judicial officers from the Los Angeles Superior Court, justices from the Courts of Appeal, and past presidents of both the State Bar and Los Angeles County Bar Association who are joining us this evening. The Beverly Hills Bar Association takes seriously its mission to lead our profession, serve our community, and advocate for justice. In honoring Justice Gilbert and Tom Nolan this year, we not only commend their dedication to the proper carriage of justice, but we support and celebrate their commitment to serve the community on the bench and from counsel's table. But we also support the bench and bar through many services and outreach programs performed by our volunteer members. So tonight I am extremely excited to share with you news of new support for bench and bar. The Beverly Hills Bar Association proudly announces, I don't know why I'm echoing like this, its mediation referral service, which will endeavor to fill the void left by the closing of the LA County Superior Court ADR program. Our goal is to reduce the court's docket and provide mediators for as many cases as possible, mirroring to the extent possible the very successful program that had to be eliminated as a result of the court funding crisis. This Bar Association's commitment to serve the community and to support the bench and bar runs as deep and as sincere as our honorees' commitment to their profession and the rule of law. Now, in order to continue to fulfill our mission, we are dependent on and profoundly grateful for the dedication of our staff, without whom nothing would be possible and with whom we excel and set the bar for the rest. Our thanks to our amazing bar staff, led by one of the most well-respected bar executives in the country, our fearless leader and Chief Executive Officer, Mark Steinberg.
Thank you, Linda, for that lovely remark. And thank you, Jonathan Stein, and your terrific dinner committee, along with the Beverly Hills Bar Association Litigation Section, for this evening's event. We are delighted that you all are here to help the Beverly Hills Bar Association Litigation Section present its 5th Litigation Awards dinner, honoring California Court of Appeals Justice Arthur Gilbert and renowned trial attorney Tom Nolan of Skadden, Arps, Slate, Marr, and Flom. We thank our honorees' family members, friends, firms, colleagues, and all of our distinguished guests for helping to make this evening so special. The Beverly Hills Bar Association is proud of our almost 84 years and well-recognized history of activism and accomplishments, serving our members, leading our profession, and advocating for justice in our community. Only 3 years ago, upon the occasion of celebrating our 80th anniversary, we built out and moved into the Bar Center in the Rolex building on Wilshire Boulevard. Everyone who has visited, attended a program or a meeting is pleased and proud of our new home and facilities. It has enabled the Beverly Hills Bar Association to do even more for our members, our community, and our profession. If you haven't been by to see it, you are invited. Finally, as we all know, these productions do not happen by themselves. So in addition to the work of our Litigation Awards Dinner Committee, it is with deep appreciation and much affection that I acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our amazing and incredible Beverly Hills Bar Association staff. Please join me in thanking them. A wonderful program, along with the presentation of the awards, awaits us. But first, thanks to the entire team here at the Montage Hotel, especially catering manager Sean Brown, chef Thomas Morton, with whom we have a close personal friendship, and pastry chef Julie Giangali, again, with whom we have a close tasting arrangement. I invite you to enjoy your delicious dinner, and we'll be back with you later. Thank you.
Isn't that food delicious? Let's thank Sean Brown, manager of Hotel Montage, and our servers for a great dinner. We will be finished with our event before 9:30, so enjoy your dessert and get comfy. In this, our 5th year, our theme is a slice of Americana. There really is no generality to accurately describe what it takes to be a really good at litigation or to be a really good judge. The best litigators usually don't come from the best schools. The best judges don't usually start out in the best jobs. What makes each of our honorees tonight the best, if you will, and each of their remarkable speakers so accomplished, is a personal matter. And by that, I don't mean personal in the sense of truly getting to know your spouse. I mean personal experience in the sense of understanding the wellspring from which each of these remarkable and remarkably dedicated people came forth. You will see tonight a slice of Americana, 4 speakers and 2 award recipients from often plain backgrounds or less than spectacular beginnings, who rose to great achievements and promise, and you will see why when you hear them speak. You know, as we all get a little too old to wear the latest fashions or to care much about matters outside of family, work, and our relationships, you can't help but see society changing in some startling ways. For one, we are absolutely immersed in a world of information, media, dense social contacts, travel, and business across a world that is flat. Yet so much of this information, or so many of these interactions, or so much of this business is with people who are really not the real deal, or who are not straight with you, or who simply do not govern themselves in accordance with core beliefs. We have all seen revealed the great public symbols of achievement who cheated on his law school exam or perhaps used performance-enhancing drugs, the television preacher who cheats on his wife, the political leader of a conservative social movement whose child is gay. And then there are the international examples, like the leader of a great nuclear nation who refuses to even acknowledge that tanks and soldiers are on foreign soil. It is not that we are simpletons or credulous or even disappointed when we find out something that we believed in is not the real deal, or someone is not being straight with us. But how can one scoot along in his work life or teach children in family life without a feeling that heroes are often little more than shells on a seashore? So pretty to look at, but uninhabited by any creature of substance. Tonight, we are part of something very different from that. We are part of this small slice of Americana, our not-so-big litigation community, come to honor the real-life equivalent of heroes. We will meet 2 honorees and their 4 speakers, all of whom are the real deal. They are straight shooters, and what lends heroic proportion is to recognize that each of our award recipients and each of our remarkable speakers came from a background that is unassuming, common, or even unexpected. And yet they have given contributions far beyond the ordinary. They have risen to positions of prominence through hard work, personal discipline, and extraordinary creativity. We are, just one slice of Americana. Justice Art Gilbert is an LA guy. Born in Santa Monica, Art went to Hollywood High School, then UCLA, then Berkeley for law school. His father was a jazz musician in his uncle's Chicago big band, and his parents raised him in a modern, hands-off fashion. He was never passionate about being a lawyer, and in fact was a graduate student in English literature first. But then again, Art became an appellate justice while his best high school friend became a rabbi and dean of Hebrew Union College. In high school, they called themselves Faith and Reason. Now, Justice Gilbert has authored 4,500 appellate opinions, decided some 20,000 appellate cases, that's not including writs, and authored 250 articles for the Daily Journal. Through all this, he keeps his father's advice near at hand. Remember who you are. And at age 77, besides working out every day, he appreciates even more the complexities of law, the nuances of jazz music. And by the way, the music you heard during dinner was Gary Green's big band, and the piano player was Justice Gilbert. Asked now why he works, he says he loves to bring cases to closure, to do the right thing. Art told me, I can't choose which socks to wear in the morning, but I'm good at deciding cases. Former Justice Elwood Louis is another LA guy. His father emigrated to Los Angeles from Qingzhou in southern China in 1920. Elwood is the seventh of 7 children. Apparently they ran out of more musical names at some point. His parents had nothing and came to America because it was gumteen, and gumteen in canteens means gold mountain. Their every dream was to raise and educate their kids to make progress for them. Elwood got 3 degrees at UCLA and started out using his MBA at Deloitte Touche and then Kevin Lathamthal. After a stint at the AG's office, the municipal court, the Superior Court, Justice Louis spent 12 years in the Court of Appeal. He left the bench for Jones Day, just as college tuition bills were coming due for kids at Yale and Berkeley. And among other things, Justice Louis is now the prison compliance officer appointed by the 3-judge federal panel overseeing California's prison population and its overcrowding with over 100,000 prisoners. Asked why he still works so hard, he answered, what would I do if I didn't do this? I'll save Tom Nolan, Jack DeCanio, and Joanne Lichman for the second half of the evening. But you get the idea. These honorees and speakers are the real deal because they live by core beliefs. Each is worthy to stand here in front of this really impressive group of litigators and judges because of the willingness to act in a principled fashion, to fight for others before themselves. You will see that our speakers and award recipients believe in different things, in different ways. For an independent judiciary, for fairness and equality, for doing the right thing even if a client urges otherwise, for being available 24/7 long after you need to, for God, for country. It is their sincerity, their work ethic, their own belief in the importance of doing the right thing that has made them successful. It is what earns respect of their peers that is shown tonight, what convinces a jury, what settles a case, or what makes a legal opinion ring with precedential value. It is a slice of Americana that goes so little recognized, but which provides the backbone of our strength. This Los Angeles, this California, this United States is not strong because its legal system is strong or because its judiciary is independent. I say instead, this Los Angeles, this state, this simple experiment of a nation, are strong because of the slice of Americana that we see tonight, that produces such extraordinary achievers, such amazing work ethics, and such devout believers in the legal system and an independent judiciary. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an extraordinary evening, made so by our small slice of Americana that we see tonight, that is our community here tonight, and by our inspiring honorees. Thank you. It's my pleasure to announce that Helen Zukin is the first speaker for Justice Art Gilbert. Helen is another LA local. Her father was an Italian medical student who knew 7 languages. He experienced the Holocaust in its milder Italian form and escaped by leading other Italian Jews on a midnight march into the forbidding mountains of central Italy, where they foraged for food and avoided detection for months until the U.S. Army made it there. Well, he made it to LA and married a radio actress from Pasadena Playhouse, who spent much of her free time as a local political activist. They raised Helen in a typically middle-class home where she started working at age 16 and worked all the way through UC Santa Cruz and Loyola Law School. Her first job was for Brown Green, who you'll see later tonight. She later worked with Roman Silberfeld, our first Litigation Award honoree. Helen's dad taught her to be a good listener. She put her mother's activism to work by evaluating judicial nominees, rating and vetting them, first on the Jenny Commission, then as its chair, then as chair of the LA County Bar Committee on Judicial Appointments, and now on the Central District Federal Magistrate Judge Merit Selection Panel. Asked why she has spent 20 years on ensuring qualified judges inhabit our judiciary, she says because the independent judiciary is a linchpin of democracy, and the qualified judges are the linchpin of this judiciary. She seemed not to even question why she would spend 20 years' worth of free time doing largely pro bono work behind the scenes. Helen is a partner at Kiesel Law and an accomplished civil litigator focusing on mass toxic torts, pharmaceutical and defective device actions, product liability, environmental property damage. Please welcome a remarkable woman, Helen Zukin.
Thank you very much. Well, you may all think that you know Arthur Gilbert well. You're familiar with his many accomplishments. You've heard that he's an exceptional jazz pianist, that he's performed at Disney Hall with his wife Barbara, that he's a renowned writer. You've already heard that he's written close to 250 columns for the Daily Journal, that he has the highest readership of any columnist in the Daily Journal, and that he's held that spot for 25 years. You're probably thinking, I've heard this all before. Well, I have the confidential file on Arthur Gilbert. I know some things that might interest you, and I might share them with you this evening. So how did I come by this confidential file? Well, I believe it was 1999 when Arthur's name was submitted by the governor for presiding justice of Division 6. I happened to be on the Jenny Commission at that time. Actually, I was its chair. So that's how I come by this file. But before I get there, I want to talk about Arthur's CV. Now, I was admonished not to talk about his CV tonight, and when I went through it, I realized why. It is page upon page of achievements, publications, awards that Arthur has received. But there is one last entry in Arthur's CV that I just can't resist reading to you this evening. When asked by a news reporter what it was like to be an appellate justice, Arthur replied, "It's just the two of us in a room, me and my brain. Only often I'm alone." Now, there actually is something you may not know about Arthur, which is that recently, in addition to the columns and the short stories and the numerous opinions that he has authored, he wrote a libretto to a musical called Edgar and Max with famed lyricist and Oscar nominee Arthur Hamilton, who wrote Cry Me a River. You may be familiar with that. And with composer, arranger, and acclaimed jazz pianist Terry Trotter. So, bet you didn't know that. All right, let's go back to the Jenny Commission and the file. It's the Jenny practice to ask each candidate to supply writing samples. Now, can you imagine that I asked Arthur Gilbert to supply writing samples? Well, I did, and he did submit them. But as you heard, he's authored close to 5,000 opinions and signed and participated in over, or close to, 20,000. Nonetheless, I'm going to share with you just two tonight that we reviewed at the Jenny Commission. Now, does anybody here know about the spelling bee case?
I see a few hands over there. Yes, okay. Well, it's McDonald versus Scripps. A student who came in second at a spelling bee sued the sponsor. So Arthur's known as the great opener. You often know from his first line what his opinion is of the case. So he starts out McDonald with the following. Question, when should an attorney say no to a client? Answer, when asked to file a lawsuit like this one. Later he writes, describing allegations from the plaintiff's complaint, the third cause of action states that plaintiff has suffered humiliation, indignity, mortification, he goes on, not to mention loss of respect and standing in the community. These terms more aptly express how attorneys who draft complaints like these should feel. Arthur concludes, as for the judgment of the trial court, we'll spell it out. In all caps, AFIRMED. Now, do you think that's spelled correctly? I don't think so. Justice Perrin told me this evening that after submitting this opinion, Arthur received a phone call from the editor of whoever edits these opinions, and pointed out that affirmed was spelled incorrectly. And I guess Arthur had to convince him that that's exactly how he wanted it spelled, because that's what it says in this opinion. All right. Well, during the Rose-Byrd era, there was a lot of controversy surrounding death penalty cases. Some of you may remember the facts of the Phillips case. That's this case. Anybody remember that case? Well, Arthur opens with, this is a death penalty case. We reverse. Missy, a female black Labrador, shall live and go out in the midday sun. Quoting Noel Coward. He promises that he won't use expressions like, that argument is barking up the wrong tree. But he goes on later in the opinion and writes, the county unleashes an argument, and the argument strays from the point. There are a few others like that in the opinion. He concludes, but the ordinance in question ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. Apologies to T.S. Eliot. So, back to the Jenny file. This is the confidential file, which I can only talk to you about because it was the subject of a public confirmation hearing. It was more of a love fest for Arthur than a confirmation hearing. But that's why we can talk about it tonight. All right. By the time Arthur's name came to the commission for presiding justice, I had already evaluated over 1,000 candidates. He was the last candidate I was to evaluate for the Jenny Commission. We sent out confidential comment forms to lawyers and judges throughout the state. Within less than a week, we received a flood of responses. We were overwhelmed with a tidal wave of responses filled with admiration and affection for Arthur. The intensity and volume of support was unprecedented. These forms were filled with an outpouring of praise. Many letters were attached, big, thick letters, long testimonials to Arthur's talents. Here is but a brief sample of what people in the legal community said about Arthur. Many colleagues and lawyers described Arthur as the poet laureate of the Court of Appeal. One person said, by far the best writer on the California court. This variation over and over again about being the best writer. Numerous judges called Arthur the archetype of an extraordinary judge who, through Judges College, taught them how to be judges. He taught them the essence of judging. And some of you know that he did that by using Shakespeare and Robert Frost poetry and a lot of probably experience and wisdom. Lawyers praised his relaxed and respectful manner at oral argument. Others said his humanity and sense of humor made those in his courtroom feel at ease even in highly charged arguments. And it was the hope of many of the Raiders that Arthur would be appointed to the California Supreme Court, where he has sat numerous times by assignment. Now, this was the common thread, the common theme through these responses, which was the right court for Arthur is the Supreme Court. He received over 250 exceptionally well-qualified ratings. It was unanimous. And I believe in the history of the commission, we had not received for a candidate that many exceptionally well-qualifieds. He was praised for the numerous reforms and innovations he instituted during his years on the bench. And one colleague wrote that Arthur was, quote, the shining star of the California judiciary. Well, Arthur, it is evident to everyone here this evening that you are still the shining star of the California judiciary. Congratulations for receiving this well-deserved award this evening. Well, I'm now here to briefly, I was told briefly, introduce another very accomplished individual, and that is Justice Elwood Louie. When I asked Elwood what he would like me to say this evening, he said, friend of Gilbert. That's all you need to say. But I can't just leave it at that. Elwood is one of the leading lawyers in our state. He has been the Daily Journal's, he's made the Daily Journal's top 100 lawyers 8 times. The last time was in 2014. You already heard, I think, Elwood not only holds a JD, an MBA, but he's a CPA. He's a very formidable adversary. I know this, I just have to ask one of my former partners to confirm that fact. He served on the municipal court, the Superior Court, and then in 1981 on the Court of Appeal. In 1987, he retired and went to Jones Day, where he has worked on complex cases, appeals, and had headed up the firm's China practice, traveling back and forth to China. And Elwood is committed to public service. That really comes through when you read his resume, when you go online and look at the things that he has done with his limited free time. He really is and has said that this is really important to him. Both Democratic and Republican governors alike look to Elwood to oversee and restructure institutions in the state that are in trouble. He's an exceptional problem solver who has served as interim director of the Department of Children's Services while handling a full-time legal practice at Jones Day. He's done many other things. You've heard that he's the prison compliance officer for the state of California. He actually went in when there was a dispute with the fee bill with Governor Wilson, and he ran the lawyers' disciplinary section of the LA County Bar. So it is really my privilege to ask Elwood Louie to come up.
It is a pleasure to speak about my personal friend, Presiding Justice Arthur Gilbert, one of the truly great judges of our time, and indeed among the very best judges who have served in the California bench. Okay, Arthur, is that good enough? Well, let me tell you some very good facts. I mean, one of the problems of following 3 different people on the stage is that they've taken all my material, so I'm going to ad-lib a little bit. Justice Gilbert was born in Los Angeles. I found out in Santa Monica now. He really is, he really has lived the American dream. Some of his, the reason Gilbert is the way he is comes from his background. I heard him talk one day with my friend Dickman Teresian, who Dickman and I grew up together in the same area. And Arthur was talking about his father, who had a delicatessen at the farm market in Los Angeles. So Dickman and I went up to him and said, "We knew your father. We knew your father before we knew you." And he was in complete disbelief. How can that be true? Well, he started cross-examining me until I was able to place the pickle barrel next to the meat counter at the position of the groceries, the produce market in the store. He then had to submit that I indeed knew his father. I knew his father before him, and I knew his father was a kind, honest person whom my mother dealt with almost daily when she bought her meats for the family. So I can tell Arthur from the character of his father and how he grew up. He attended Hollywood High School. He was a star basketball player. I think he was on the B or C or D team, whichever it was. He received his bachelor's degree from UCLA in English literature. He didn't take the Jewish and engineering courses I took in accounting. He graduated from UC, that's supposed to be a joke, UC Berkeley, and then he began his career as a deputy city attorney, and then eventually in private practice in Los Angeles. On Monday, August 18th, 1975, which is a very important date in both our lives, he and I received a call from Governor Brown appointing us to the Los Angeles Municipal Court. Arthur claims that he received the call first, although neither of us has been ever able to examine the governor closely enough for him to tell us who, in fact, he appointed first. This has been a serious debate between the two of us for over 40 years. Who got the call first? Well, I'm speaking to you in honest truth. It was me who got the call first. After his assignment, the initial assignments, he went to the traffic court, where he was affectionately known as the king of the traffic court. And yes, he made a number of innovations, simple things that made everybody's life easy. He had traffic tickets translated into Spanish, so most of the litigants who come to court would be able to understand what they were being charged with and how to defend themselves. Remarkable. Yes, Justice Gilbert is known for his intelligence, his collegial personality, and his commitment to the public service as a judge. He has authored countless well-reasoned and creative opinions, which occasionally are spiced with wit and humor. It is indeed true what Helen said. It's just the two of us in the room sometimes. Me and my brain, only I'm off alone. Well, the true story of how this phrase began is what Arthur Gilbert was first appointed to the Court of Appeal Division 6. He did not have a courtroom. He did not have a building. He did not have a chambers. I invited him into my chambers and let him sit at my counsel table, on my conference table, and we worked together. Well, the real rendition of this truth is that Arthur would say to me, "I wish I was alone because you're making too much noise." I said, "I'm the host here." Anyway, for more than 25 years, his monthly column, Under Submission, has been read and featured by the Los Angeles Daily Journal and enjoyed by many of us. In one humorous article, I suggested that Arthur comment on Shaquille O'Neal's prediction that the Kings would, and then he put a phrase in, and then words were added, cheat, in order to beat the Lakers. Well, Arthur put in his column what Shaquille O'Neal would say, and then he would say, well, if Shaquille really read the Daily Journal, he would roll my head around the court. What I did was I was on the Harbor Commission, and Shaquille was a reserved Harbor police officer. So Shaquille took a copy of his column and said, "J. Gilbert, what makes you think I don't read your column?" And he signed it, and it was presented to him in court, so that was really a remarkable incident. I can tell you about all the awards Arthur's won. He's been the Distinguished Jurist Award by this association, the Bernard Jefferson Award by the California Judges Association, Appellate Justice of the Year by the Consumer Lawyers Association, Judicial Council's Kleps Award, and since 1998, he's been a fellow of the Whitkin Legal Institute. His 40-plus years of judicial service are remarkable, and he's been a presiding justice since 1999. I got the opportunity to speak first at his confirmation hearing, so I really know the true facts, and I know that file as well as you do, Helen. One of the most important facts of his personal life is that he's married to a truly wonderful person, Barbara Gilbert, an accomplished musician of her own. And they together make a team that is unbelievable, of a life partnership, which is all of us should marvel and emulate. And again, showing that this world is a small place. Not only did I know of Arthur's father, but Barbara and my wife Crystal were high school classmates at Marshall High School in Los Feliz. He's a brilliant pianist, we know that, but I have challenged him to write an opera in legalese. So he can, in one of his opinions, he will now create an opera. I know Gilbert as a friend, a confidant, a judicial colleague, but I also know him in a way that none of you know him. I was his lawyer in a case that is bigger than Marbury versus Madison. It's Gilbert versus Chang. And it's remarkable that Gilbert would choose a Chinese lawyer to represent him against another Chinese litigant, Chang, who was the controller. But this case is about a principle where the Attorney General of California has for 50 years plus said that a retired judge who leaves office with an unexpired term cannot serve in a public capacity. And for more than a dozen people who have been caught by this, a judge who leaves the bench with term, for example, in the Superior Court, wanted to be the Chief Deputy Attorney General, Chief Deputy District in a northern county, served 20 years on the criminal bench. What would be a better person to be a Chief Deputy Prosecutor than that person? Got caught by this rule. But here comes Gilbert, going to challenge it, and we were successful. Well, what was he like as a client? Was he a pain in the ass? Was he a good strategist? He was all of this. He was a pain in the ass and a great strategist. And once we had fun, we structured the oral argument the day before with strategy, and we figured this case out to the T, both of us together. He was an equal partner. And what we had to do was fight off all the other judicial colleagues who wanted to help us do this case in their way. But we survived that, and Arthur is credited for having put his position on the line and being deposed by the Attorney General's office, where that silly lawyer did not know the difference between what music Arthur played and said, "You play elevator music?" Or what did he say, cocktail music? Didn't know your talents, and that was just not acceptable. Well, the question I have, and I will end with, why is Gilbert such a great judge? He's obviously smart, make that brilliant. He can see the big picture. He researches and writes with the best legal minds in this planet. He is diligent, knows the record, and studies the prevailing precedents. But that's not why he's a great judge. The answer to this question is that he has a strong moral compass. He's compassionate, and he's committed to doing justice in our system. He wants to do the right thing, and he will take whatever time is necessary to achieve the right answer. It is because of these personal characteristics that make him a great judge and a great person. And I'm proud to call him my friend. And thank you very much. May I also extend my congratulations to my former law partner, Tom Nolan, on his award this evening. He is also truly deserving of this honor. Thank you.
And now, a surprise for you. What good is a formal dinner unless it has a surprise, a short surprise? Justice Art Gilbert has a passion for music. Here to feat Art and all of us with a song are the Singers-in-Law. They are John Bloomberg, a medical and legal malpractice attorney. Ken Freundlich, an entertainment attorney, well known to everybody at Beverly Hills Bar Association. Art's wife, Barbara Gilbert, obviously well known to Art. And Linda Hurwitz, a labor and employment attorney. Musical director Jerry Ranger composed this tribute just for tonight. Please welcome the singers-in-law.
Listen close, and we will sing about all the wit that a justice can bring.
Sha-doo-be-da-doo-dot-dot-beep-bop. Listen close, and we will sing about all the wit that a justice can bring. Wise decisions and such with a Gilbert touch.
He'll quote laws he knows so well. It's really a shame that Arthur can't spell. Is that asking too much from the Gilbert touch?
He knows rhythm on piano. When he plays, we go with him, 'cause his judgment leads the way. From West Coast jazz, he felt an urge that led to his musical dramaturge. Never fails in a touch, that's the Gilbert touch. From English lit,
And then,
philosophy,
and then,
his parodies of poetry. When good enough wasn't good enough. 'Cause that's Arthur, there's Huckleberry Finn.
and then,
Just guess what comes?
and then,
Those Ravi Shankar tabla drums. So changing that ruling's not so tough. For Arthur, he says he always acts just like a worrywart. But then look at what he did to traffic court. Now see that smile when he dons his gown. I guess it can't hurt to know Jerry Brown. When he rules, it's none such with the Gilbert touch. Now he's a music connoisseur. He's a legal raconteur. That's Arthur with the Gilbert touch. But since we know Arthur, here's us. Yeah.
Okay, so Judge Michael Nash brought humanity and efficiency to the largest juvenile court system in the country. As his longtime supervising judge, he brought down the number of kids under supervision from 65,000 in the 1990s to under 28,000 in 2014. And this is while LA County's population increased by 20%. He reduced the backlog of foster children waiting for adoption from 6,000 kids in 1998 to under 1,500 when he left the supervising judge position in 2014 for retirement. The program that he started, Adoptions on Saturdays when low-income parents don't have to miss work, is gone nationwide and is now National Adoption Day. Michael is now retired, but has returned to sit by assignment in the juvenile court, here to present the Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence to Justice Gilbert is our 2014 honoree, Michael Nash.
Well, good evening, everybody, and I'm really happy to be here with you tonight. When I received this award last year, it certainly was one of the highlights of my career, especially to receive an award named after our great Chief Justice, our great former Chief Justice, Ronald M. George. I'm privileged tonight to be here with you to participate in the celebration of Justice Gilbert's career, and also to celebrate Tom Nolan, whom I worked with when he was a clerk in the Court of Appeal some 40 years ago. Today, the Beverly Hills Bar Association received some important congratulatory letters for Justice Gilbert. They were too late for the tribute booklet, and I have the privilege to share them with you. The first one says, "Arthur, I appointed you to the municipal court almost 40 years ago. You have distinguished yourself on the municipal and superior courts and the Court of Appeal with well-written decisions that reflect scholarship and humanity. Congratulations to you for your unique and invaluable contribution to the California judiciary and for receiving the 2015 Ronald George Award for Judicial Excellence. Sincerely, Jerry Brown." And I think he's still in Sacramento. The second one says, "Dear Justice Gilbert, in your court opinions and newspaper columns, you are known as a clever and pithy writer, someone who is as likely to quote Bob Dylan as Dylan Thomas. So in honor of your honor, winning the honor of the Ronald M. George Judicial Excellence Award, I'd like to add my pithy congratulations. Congratulations, well deserved. And at the risk of being verbose, I'd like to add a few more words. By the end of this year, you will have graced the judicial branch with your presence for 50 years and amused readers of your column for about half of those years. You were appointed in 1982 by Governor Brown the Younger, and your Renaissance qualities, no doubt, appealed to the governor's wide-ranging intellectual interests. Signed, sincerely, Tani G. Cantel Sakiuye, Chief Justice of California." Now, my own career has also, over the years, intersected a little bit with Justice Gilbert. As a new juvenile court judge in the early 1990s, attending statewide juvenile court conferences, one of the highlights for several years was the case law update presentation by Justice Gilbert and Justice Louis, also known as the comedy team of Gilbert and Louis. Their workshops were always entertaining, full of wit, and most importantly, very informative for those of us toiling in the trenches. And on top of all this, they made it look so easy. Now, speaking for myself, and I know many other judges, were extremely disappointed when they stopped doing this presentation after several years, probably because of all the work that it entailed. And over the years, many others, myself included for a couple of years, tried to take on this task. But the truth is, for you two, nobody ever did it better. The Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence recognizes an outstanding member of the judiciary whose work and career have significantly improved the administration of justice and raised the standards and integrity of the judiciary throughout the state. The award honors a judicial officer who leaves a legacy of accomplishment, innovation, and success with an indelible long-term impact. I am thrilled this evening to present the Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence to Justice Arthur Gilbert. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming and honoring Justice Gilbert.
Thank you so much. Wow. I want to thank Helen and Elwood, you're truly great friends, and I hope you have not damaged your credibility too much with those wonderful things you said about me. And I thought I had been kicked out of the quartet because they'd always go in another room without me to rehearse for this. And you guys were terrific. Singers-in-law, thank you. I have this, you know, when I was a youngster, I was toying whether, am I going to be a musician or something else? And my parents said, are you kidding? Do you want to starve to death? And so I went to law school because I didn't know what else to do. And now in my elderly years, I'm playing gigs all over the city. I can't believe, I don't have time for law anymore. And the Singers-in-Law's quartet we perform, I have to put in a plug, we are going to be performing at Vitello's, a leading jazz club, when in March 22nd, Sunday, March 22nd, everybody come. It's going to be great. So I had to throw that plug in, sorry. And also some of my staff are here. When I look good, it's because of my staff. And Bonnie Edwards is my judicial assistant. No opinion, no column goes out without Bonnie saying, oh my God, you're not going to say that. Wait a minute, you have a dangling participle here. And she's just wonderful. I adore her. Sharon Gronberg, our writs attorney. Whenever you file a writ, it goes to Sharon first. She writes up a memo, and she's generally right. So you got to talk to Sharon. She's wonderful. Paul McGill, the clerk of the court, who makes this court actually work. He's the guy in charge. I adore him. I love him. He's the reason I'm here all these years. And my dear colleague, Justice Perrin, who brings a Talmudic analysis to every opinion we have. He's here. Justice Yegan would have been here, but he's involved with wounded warriors. He spent a lot of time with them, and he's there, and I tell him, you should be there rather than here. So I'm so grateful that you're all here. And I just have to mention Andrea Orden. She's here. She and I went to high school. Should I tell him that? Andrea Orden and I have been friends for, my God, over like about 50 years. And so it's so wonderful that you're here. The editor of the Daily Journal, I kid David Houston, my boss, and Ben Armistead is my immediate editor. And I wanted to introduce him to the staff because at the last minute, my column's going out to him, and we say, change this, change that, like just before the galleys are going in. And if you take a look at Ben Armistead, his parents could be my children. I can't get it. He's my, he's a wonderful editor, and we have a lot of fun together. Before I make a few remarks, there's one little thing I just have to bring up. It's a little awkward, and I just have to bring this up, and I hope you'll forgive me. You know, with longevity, one acquires a few accolades over the decades, a panegyric here and there, a tribute now and then. But there's something missing in my life. I have never had anything named after me. I mean, Steve Perrin has a juvenile center actually named after him, the Perrin Juvenile Center. There's the Edelman Juvenile Center. People have all kinds of things named after them. And Harry Pragerson, you know Harry, he's on the Ninth Circuit. There's a transition road on the, I'm not kidding, on the Century Freeway, and it's the Judge Harry Pragerson Transition Road. And I'm kind of pissed, I gotta tell you. I talked to my dear friend Elwood Louie, who fixes everything and gets things done. And I said, can't you do something? You fix the bar, you fix everything, governors call you, nothing at all. Helen Zukin, we become dear friends. She hasn't been able to do anything. Well, I figured out, how did Harry Pragerson get a transition road named after him? And it occurred to me, I figured this out, I didn't ask him. I know Harry, we go back years. He tried the case that involved the Century Freeway. And he said they could build a freeway. So of course they're going to build a goddamn transition road after him. Now what about me? Well, let me tell you about a case that I wrote, Beverly Hills Bar, called Friedman versus the City of Beverly Hills. You'll find it at 47 Cal App 4th, 436. And the question in the case was, may a city create preferential parking to its residents, but not to its merchants? And the city wanted to have this preferential parking. And the merchants were fighting it, and Justice Gilbert, that's me, authored an opinion that said, yes, the Beverly Hills city can do whatever the hell it wants because the vehicle code allows it. There's not a preemption problem. I wrote that opinion for Beverly Hills. Now, I brought this up once before when I spoke before this group and asked some of the influential people in the audience if you could do something about it. This is what I want. Nothing big. It doesn't have to be a building. All I want is a passenger loading zone named after me. I don't want a loading zone, I want a passenger. And what better place than the Montage Hotel? Listen, it'll work. I want you to work on this. The presiding Justice Gilbert passenger loading zone. Some sheik gets off at the airport at LAX, and I want the cabbie or someone there who's directing the cabs to say, take the sheik to the Montage Hotel at the Justice Gilbert passenger loading zone. That's all I'm asking for. So I hope you'll work on that. Thank you, then. Okay, a few comments. I'm also very pleased to be on a program with Tom Nolan. He's a wonderful lawyer. He appeared in our court, I know him, and he appeared in our court on a very difficult case, wrote a stunning brief, and an oral argument that was mesmerizing. And you kept me up we talked about the case recently. You kept me up at night for weeks worrying about this case. He is really a truly great lawyer, and I'm honored to be on the same bill with you. You're just a wonderful person, a great lawyer. Just have to say that. So, I've said this many times, and I just have 3 quick stories I want to tell you, which sort of is about my career and about our profession, a little bit. 3 quick stories. As I've said, we're all about stories, aren't we? You've heard this before. I mean, the law is about stories, isn't it? A client comes into your room and into your office and tells you a story. This happened, that happened. And then you think, well, is there a case here? And can he pay? And then, and then you decide, well, yeah, maybe there is a story here. And you tell the story in the context of the law. And you may call the other attorney and tell the opposing attorney, tell them your version of the story, they tell you their version, and then there's a story, maybe you have to write a brief or a motion in court, that's a story, huh? And then there's a story that's presented in court. Witnesses are testifying, that's a story. And then a judge writes a decision, statement of decision, it's a story. And then there's an appeal, and the appeal comes up to the Court of Appeal. And we read the briefs, and we read these 2 different stories, and then people argue and tell a story. And then we write an opinion, which is a story. Everything in life is a story. Our profession is about telling stories. That's what we're about. So here's a story. 3 quick stories. Years ago, when I was a lawyer, I wound up managing the campaign for Ed Edelman for supervisor. He was running for county supervisor. And we were at a campaign event, and we're going down the 405 freeway out in the valley to another event. And we're zooming along the freeway in the fast lane, and I look to the right, and on the shoulder is a kitten. And we go by the cat, and I say, oh my God, there's a kitten. There's a kitten on the, and I don't know what to do. We didn't have cell phones then. You couldn't, it was in the 70s, early 70s, you couldn't call anyone. And I said, what am I going to do? And he says, my God, I don't know. And there's other people in the car, and we have to go to a campaign event. And so can we get off and go around and get off in an off-ramp and come back? That's not going to work. If I stop the car, I have a candidate in the car. It's dangerous. I didn't know what to do. And it's a cat. I know it's not a person, but it haunted me. And I said, God, I want to have a second chance. And this story about the cat just stayed with me. And then several years later, this is a real story. I'm going over Topanga Canyon on the way to the valley. And you go over and you're down, and I'm about maybe a half a mile from Ventura Boulevard. And in the middle of and I see kids screaming and yelling on the side of the road. And in the middle of the road is a cat, a kitten. And I stop the car, I jam on the brakes, put on the emergency lights, jump out of the car, and I stand in the middle of the street and stop all the traffic, scoop up the kitten in my arms, bring the kitten and the kitten's too scared to run. Thank God it didn't run away. And I bring the kitten to the kids, and the kids are doing this, and all the cars have stopped, and being the ham that I am, I did take a bow. And everybody's applauding. It's true. And I feel so good. And I get in my car, and I got a second chance. I got a second chance to save this kitten. Now, I found that this story became kind of a metaphor for my life on the bench, and maybe for all our lives in this respect. I was sworn in as a municipal court judge in August 18th. I got the first call. Elwood got the second call from Jerry Brown, and my idol Stanley Moss swore me in. And Stanley Moss was an idol of mine, and how he got on the bench is a fascinating story. We don't have time for it, but he was Gilbert Olson's legal secretary. He was in his 20s. Legal affairs secretary, and it's his last day in office. And this is a true. Moss told me this story, and it's in a biography. It says it's a real story, and he doesn't care who knows about it. And Gilbert Olson, Governor Olson, said, "Hey, you can sign this appointment to the municipal court." And he says, "Oh, great, but I'm sorry, Governor, you've already done all the Superior Court appointments. There's none left." He says, "Oh, is there a Superior Court one left?" He says, "Yeah, there is one. Sign that one." That's how he became a Superior Court judge. Life is chance, all kinds of chances. So he's a Superior Court judge, and he decides a case in the 1940s. And I have the site of the case here, and I just have to share this with you. It was Wright versus Dry, and we had racially restrictive covenants in the state of California. And a black couple wanted to move into a house pretty close to here on Wilshire Boulevard near the Miracle Mile. And they purchased the house, and the deed contained a racially restrictive covenant. And some neighborhood residents sought to enforce this Caucasian-only requirement. And they stayed, and the Dries, that was their name, said, "We're not going to take this, we're going to fight it." And Stanley Moss was a kid in his 30s sitting on the Superior Court, and he wrote an opinion in which he said that it was unconstitutional. And this is one of the, here's a quote from the case. He wrote a short opinion. He said, these were a black couple, and Mr. Dry had been in the army. And he said, "Our nation has just fought the Nazi race superiority doctrine. One of these defendants was in that war," that's Mr. Dry, "and is a Purple Heart veteran. This court would indeed be callous if it were to permit him to be ousted from his own home by using race as the measure of his worth as a citizen and neighbor. We read the columns in the press each day about un-American activities. This court feels there is no more reprehensible un-American activity than to attempt to deprive persons of their homes on a master race theory." And he threw the damn case out. And I said, "Wow, look what you get to do as a judge." There was no precedent for this. He knew that was the right decision. And I said to myself as I was sworn in by Stanley Moss, "Gee, I wonder if I'll ever get that opportunity." Well, I was a city attorney when I first got out of law school. Johnny Cochran and I were in the city attorney's office together. And we were great friends. We joke about things. Some of the jokes we told each other, and some of the things we did in court. Someday, if we have some time afterwards, I'll tell you at the bar. We had some great times. But we prosecuted cases under 647A, which made it unlawful to solicit a lewd act in a public place. It was a statute that really targeted gay people. And it made me sick to my stomach that we were doing this, that we were actually prosecuting these cases. I would go home and feel just like, I felt terrible about it. And I said, God, I wish we could make a change here. But I'm just a city attorney just out of law school. I'm in my 20s. What am I going to do about that? So if one guy goes up to another guy in a bar and says, hey, let's go up to my room and have sex, you're violating the law. That was just horrendous. So then I get on the municipal court. And some terrific attorneys, Jay Cohorn, who's in the cap, and what's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. I'll think of it in a minute. Coleman brought an action challenging the constitutionality of that statute. And I'm a municipal court judge in his 30s. I've just been on the court a year. And I got this case. And all the judges said, hey, let Gilbert decide the cases, because I was in the master calendar court. So all the cases come to me. I've got 70, 80 cases. And I decided, just like Stanley Moss did, that it was unconstitutional. Now, he wrote a wonderful, eloquent opinion. My opinion was my first opinion I ever wrote as a municipal court judge, a kid in his 30s. The Brown Act said that consenting adults can do what they want in private. And I wrote this great opinion. You know what I said? If you can do it, you ought to be able to talk about it. That was my opinion. And I ruled it unconstitutional. Now, when Stanley Moss ruled the racially restrictive covenant was unconstitutional, a year or two later, Shelley versus Kramer, the United States Supreme Court, said it was unconstitutional. When I made that decision, in a separate decision, the California Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional. To me, it's the proudest day of my life to do that. So thank you. I'm deeply touched by this award. Thank you.
And now for the second half of our evening and the second slice of Americana. Our Excellence in Advocacy Award goes to Tom Nolan. Tom's dad was an FBI agent, and he died when Tom was 6. His mom moved the 4 kids from the Bronx to Burbank. Tom's mother was a strict Irish Catholic who worked 2 jobs, and according to Tom, instilled the fear of God in him. She also gave him the work ethic and core values that he has today. He went into the FBI, like his dad, right out of high school, then volunteered for the Vietnam War, but ended up serving in Alaska. After law school at night, where he was given a job offer by a class instructor, Tom Girardi, he instead joined the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's one slice of Americana, and Jack DiCanio, who will speak for Tom, is another. Jack was another Irish Catholic boyo, born in New York City on St. Patrick's Day. His mother died when Jack was young. His father never graduated high school, and so held 3 jobs while raising Jack and his brothers. Not surprisingly, Jack grew up competitive and sports-loving, in part because one of his father's jobs included being an usher at Madison Square Garden and then later Shea Stadium. Jack and his brothers were the first to go to college in their family. For Jack, that college was Notre Dame, which continues to play an outsized role in his life. Notre Dame teaches that hard work earns you a place in the world. Responsibility and loyalty to a community built around God is how you become impactful. And for Domers like Jack, you are defined by what you fight for. Our third slice of Americana is our next speaker, Joanne Lichtman. She is a lawyer that was at Howry & Simon for 23 years with Tom Nolan and Jack DeCanio. She grew up in Rochester, where her father was dean of the University of Rochester Medical School, and according to Joan, in her home, work was the religion. And her father emphasized to his 3 daughters that each must be financially independent, or at least have the ability to be. With that said, Joanne followed her husband to Caltech. She never left LA, just as she had never lost her East Coast intensity. Joanne is driven by the desire to serve others, enjoys collaboration with her partners at Baker Hostetler, and is fascinated by the puzzle solving of complex business litigation in federal and state courts throughout the United States. Her experience includes a range of complex commercial litigation cases with a particular focus on consumer and antitrust class actions. Please welcome Joanne Lichtman.
Hi, I'm Joanne Lichtman, and I'm a friend of Tom's. I'm honored to be here tonight to introduce Tom and to celebrate this very well-deserved award. Tom and I met 23 years ago. It was my first day of work at Howry & Simon, and it was Tom's first day too. I was a young associate. Howry had just opened an LA office. Tom joined Howry with Stephen Miller and their team from Miller & Nolan. As a young lawyer, I still remember being so excited to be working with Tom, and he lost no time in making his priorities completely clear. By the end of the first day, I had learned that I would never again root for another college football team other than Notre Dame. Tom already had a reputation as a top trial lawyer in Los Angeles, but as it turns out, he was just getting started. At that time, Howry was principally an antitrust firm, and despite his experience largely as a prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, Tom quickly showed his exceptional versatility as a trial lawyer, leading a team representing Litton Industries in a massive and complex antitrust case. Tom not only won the case, he won it twice. The first jury came back after 29 days in favor of Litton for $234 million. But the judge ordered a retrial on the damages phase. It was a very complicated case, and she wanted a smarter jury to hear the damages. The second, all-college educated jury came back after 1.5 hours with more, $250 million. And the jury foreperson apologized to Tom for the length of the deliberations. He said they would have come back sooner, but he felt that they had to wait for the clerk to deliver the exhibits. After the verdict was trebled at $750 million, it was the largest jury verdict. It was the largest jury award in California at the time and the 3rd largest in the country. And that was Tom's first civil case. He's gone on to stack up similar victories, many with unprecedented jury verdicts in a wide range of complex, high-profile cases, totaling over $1 billion in trial verdicts and cementing his reputation as one of the top go-to trial lawyers in the country. After winning a case, Tom will always say to me, "Joanne, I got so lucky. I was so lucky to have such a great team. I was so lucky to have such a good jury. I was so lucky a piece of evidence was in or out." For those of you who know Tom, you know as well as I do, it isn't luck. Tom is the smartest, most prepared, most creative, and hardest working lawyer I know. He does nothing by rote. He is always thinking, creating, listening to get to the essence, to the compelling story that will make sense in even the most complicated case. But while Tom's professional accomplishments are many, it is his character that tells the bigger story. Tom grew up in LA, and it probably won't surprise you to hear he's wanted to be a trial lawyer since he was 5 years old. But actually, he really wanted to be a professional baseball player, but if that didn't work out, he said he'd settle for being a lawyer. So Tom's goal was clear from early on, but his path was not an easy one. When Tom was only 6, his father died, leaving his mother to raise him, his brother, and 2 sisters on her own. After high school, Tom worked the midnight shift at the FBI's LA office, going to Loyola Marymount College during the day. After a time in the Army, he worked full-time at the Court of Appeals to put himself through Loyola Law School at night. Tom's background is so much of who he is. He never forgets it. It defines him as a person, but also as a lawyer. Tom cherished and deeply respected his mother, how hard she worked while raising 4 kids. And those of you who have worked with Tom know that without fail, he lights her votive candle before every opening statement and before every closing argument. I've always felt that Tom's respect for his mother and the sacrifices she made gave him a special appreciation for the challenges that working women face. Tom is a great and loyal advocate for everyone who works with him, but he takes special pride in his support for women, and particularly working mothers. When I was first starting to have children, Tom made it possible for me to make my children a priority while also developing my career. I'm sure there are many women in this room who would say the same thing, that Tom gave them opportunities, promoted them, while appreciating the demands of parenting without any bias to their ability to be recognized and succeed. Perhaps that's also because Tom is such a proud husband and father himself, a man who has never hesitated to talk openly about his priority as a parent. Yes, Tom can get really excited about his latest legal strategy, but if you want to hear genuine emotion, ask him to tell you about Mary Ann or his kids, Ryan, Katie, and Amy, what's new in their lives or what their next plan is. I have always been amazed at how one moment Tom is preparing closing arguments, and in the next he's flying to South Bend for a football game with Ryan, or to GW or SMU for a father-daughter weekend. Tom somehow also finds the time to step up as an advocate for those who don't have the resources to defend themselves. Several years ago, with an enormous caseload already, Tom took on lead trial counsel in a slumlord case for the Inner City Law Center, representing 59 tenants living in horrific conditions here in Los Angeles. An apartment building where there were rats, cockroaches, there was no ventilation because the windows were nailed shut. The building was filled with so much mold that the tenants were getting respiratory diseases, and a baby had tragically died. Of course, there was a trial plan in place as to who would testify when, and the mother of the baby was going to be the last witness. One morning, very early in the trial, Tom saw that one of the landlord's insurance representatives had come to the courtroom. He immediately changed the plan. He got hold of the young mother and put her on as the very first witness that day. By the end of Tom's examination, the jury was in tears. By afternoon, the case had settled. It was at that time the largest slumlord settlement in the Inner City Law Center's history. And the Inner City Law Center will tell you that it was a pivotal turning point in getting slumlord cases taken seriously and changing landlords' expectations about the severe penalties they would face for their actions. Tom has an innate ability to reach out to people, to sense their emotions, to put himself in their shoes, and to inspire their trust. Don't get me wrong, to be as great a trial lawyer as Tom Nolan, you need a healthy ego and a strong sense of self. And it doesn't hurt that he has the competitiveness of Michael Jordan. To Tom, nothing but the best is acceptable. He is tough when he needs to be, for sure, but always civil. No matter how intense the case, no matter how high the stakes, it is Tom's integrity, fairness, accountability, and fundamental decency that so distinguish him. It says so much about Tom that he counts as his close personal friends many of the same lawyers who he has opposed in the courtroom. Tom also uses his impressive advocacy skills outside the courtroom as well. A few years ago, I was in the hospital. When Tom found out, he immediately came to see what was going on and how he could help. The hospital security told him he couldn't come in, that only family was allowed. So he left, came back, and told them he was my uncle, and he got in. That sums up a lot about Tom Nolan. It's great to have him as your lawyer. It's even better to have him as your friend. Congratulations, Tom, on this award, your tremendous accomplishments, and the honor you bring to our profession. I have no doubt there will be many more accomplishments to come. But for those of us who are fortunate to be your friends and colleagues, it is your exquisite balance between a profound commitment to work and an equally profound commitment to your family and friends that we all have the most to learn. It is my pleasure to introduce Jack DeCanio. Jack is head of litigation at Skadden's Palo Alto office. His career, which began in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California, encompasses a diverse trial practice focusing on complex federal and state litigation and white-collar criminal defense.
Thank you, Joanne. I really wish we would have done a song for Tom. That was such a great idea. I wish we would have thought about it. I could not agree more with Joanne's eloquent comments about Tom, particularly the ones about being a fan of the Fighting Irish. All of the things that we love and respect about Tom are all the reasons behind why he's such a great lawyer, all of his professional achievements, why he serves as a role model and mentor to so many young lawyers, why his partners look to him for advice and for leadership, and why for over 40 years, jurors and judges alike trust and believe in him. Joanne talked about Tom's deep friendships and enduring loyalty. I've certainly been the beneficiary of that through the years. We had a partner at Skadden who was a gay rights advocate, and he brought a pro bono case against the Homedale, New Jersey Board of Education, alleging discrimination based upon sexual orientation. The facts of this case were really, really awful. It was a young student who was the victim of harassment, verbal abuse, physical assaults, and the parents tried everything they could to bring this to the attention of the Board of Education and school officials, but were largely ignored. During the litigation, our partner became seriously ill, gravely ill, and he couldn't continue with the case. So he reached across the country to the one partner in our firm who he trusted with what would be his very last case, the most important case of his life, and that partner was Tom. Now, stepping into a case to help a colleague is not extraordinary in and of itself, but what was extraordinary was, at the time, Tom was stretched incredibly thin. What was extraordinary was Tom's willingness to work himself to near physical exhaustion to be there for his friend and his partner. Tom made a promise to our partner. He was not going to lose that case. And when he did, the amount paid by the Board of Education was the second largest settlement of its kind in the nation. And the case was the first successful challenge to anti-gay discrimination in a public school. Tom has a lot of big wins. I'm not sure that any mean more to him than this one. One of the things that you can't help notice when you meet Tom is he has a great sense of humor. He's a really, really funny guy. And he uses his humor to diffuse situations and to disarm his adversaries. And he uses it very, very effectively at trial. Tom defended the founder of the Hard Rock Cafe chain of restaurants against claims that he had breached his fiduciary duties owed to his ex-wife, who owned a small piece of the company. The ex-wife sought approximately $20 million in damages. Well, during jury selection, a potential juror announced in open court that he just didn't like lawyers. He didn't trust lawyers. He then gave everybody an earful about how lawyers will say just about anything to win, and the jurors have no idea who to believe. Without skipping a beat, Tom smiled and told the juror, "I totally understand how you feel." And then looking over at his opposing counsel, he said, "I don't know about Mr. Jones, but this is just my day job." The entire courtroom burst out in laughter, and after a 3-week trial, the jury came out with the complete defense verdict for Tom. Tom's also a fierce competitor. Joanne talked about it. Now, a fighting spirit is a quality that all great trial lawyers have. But Tom's fighting spirit extends not only to the trial, but to the mock exercise that precedes the trial. Now, as we all know, mock exercises are usually designed to ensure a certain balance in the presentation. And so it's very important that both sides are aware of what's going to be said. Well, during a mock jury exercise in a very important case for our firm, Tom felt that the lawyer representing the plaintiff's side of this case tried to gain an unfair advantage by including in rebuttal arguments that had not been planned as part of the exercise. Well, the next thing we know, during one of the breaks, someone says, "Hey, there's 2 guys fighting in the parking lot." Without looking out the window, the jury consultant said, "That's probably Tom Nolan giving his defense rebuttal, Nolan style." Tom won the fight and the exercise. He later told me that winning the fight was far more gratifying. Tom is also fearless. He's routinely asked to parachute into cases at the very last minute. He has an amazing ability to quickly learn facts and to develop a compelling trial strategy. He also has a unique ability to manage an awful lot of lawyers, both inside the firm and outside the firm, and get all those lawyers to move in the same direction. And I am particularly amazed when he's able to do this in a case where he's coming into a trial in which another law firm has done all the preparation. Tom, maybe because of the force of his personality, is able to get people on the same page. I remember when Tom first got to the firm, he was asked by one of our partners to be the lead trial lawyer for our clients in the WorldCom securities litigation. Now, to get up to speed on a case like that is a massive, massive endeavor and a very daunting task, even for someone like Tom. And Tom worked tirelessly and was completely committed to the case. So one day, Tom had a root canal scheduled, and he was just walking into his dentist's office, and he got a call from one of our partners saying, "Tom, this is a very, very important conference call. There's going to be 80, 90 people on it. We really need you to participate, and we need you to, to take it." So, and it's a true story. So Tom walks into the dentist, and he tells his dentist, "Doc, I'm going to need to keep my cell phone on a speakerphone, and I would like you to go lie it on the Novocaine so that I could be alert during this procedure." When Tom got back to the office, we asked him how it went, and he said that the conference call was more painful than the root canal. We talk about Tom parachuting in late. The most extreme example, I think, that I remember was in the Freedom Communications case. Tom was retained really just 2 weeks before jury selection to represent the publisher of the Orange County Register in a $130 million class action brought by 6,000 current and former newspaper carriers. The newspaper carriers were alleging violations of state wage and hour laws. And the case posed the question of whether the carriers were employees or contractors of the Register. The trial lasted 2 months before the plaintiffs capitulated and agreed to a settlement that preserved the independent contractor status for the Register's carriers. This result served as a critical test for other actions threatened against major newspapers across the country. Tom also has a great touch, great intuition when it comes to trial. And I think some of it comes from when he was in high school, he read Louis Neiser's book, My Life in Court. And for any of you who've read Louis Neiser's books, he has this great ability to bring about the excitement of a trial to a reader. And Tom has always tried to look for that in his trials. He always tried to look for that evidence that could bring about the high drama that could kind of capture the imagination of a jury. Well, Tom defended Wells Fargo in a class action alleging claims of racial discrimination in their mortgage lending. In preparation for the cross-examination of a key witness, Tom discovered that one of the documents just didn't look right. Now, to be honest with you, none of us saw it, but Tom was focused on this document, thought there was something wrong with it. Finally, to humor him, we sent out a subpoena to get the original. And lo and behold, Tom was right. The original had been altered with some whiteout. So the next day in court, during the cross-examination of a real critical witness, Tom asked a series of questions that ultimately led the witness to that document. He then, with the witness had the document in his hand, Tom approached the witness with a flashlight. And he asked the witness to shine the flashlight on the document and read the numbers that were underneath the whited out portion. Courtroom was in stunned silence. Witness tried very, very hard to duck and dive and to try to suggest that maybe there wasn't anything under there. But Tom, with the skill of a surgeon, went through his examination and ultimately got the witness to acknowledge that, in fact, the document had been altered. That was a turning point in that trial and led to a great result for our client. All these good results notwithstanding, I really think that Tom missed his calling. I think he should have been a contingency lawyer. He could have retired a heck of a lot longer ago. On the plaintiff's side, as we've said, he obtained judgments of over $1 billion, but what that doesn't include is all of the verdicts that Tom had trebled. Really an astonishing ability to represent both sides of the V. Tom has had a career that most lawyers can only dream about. He served as the lead trial lawyer in high-profile cases and trials like the WorldCom securities case, the Mattel MGM Bratz trial, the Toyota unintended acceleration litigation, and so many others. But to me, what he has done pales in comparison to how he has done it. You know, when our associate at my firm learned that I was going to be making remarks about Tom tonight, they flooded me with emails, with comments that they wanted me to share with all of you tonight. There were too many for me to do that tonight. So what I tried to do is I tried to find one that really best exemplified the feelings of all, and I'd like to read that to you right now. It read, Tom recently had an extremely difficult presentation he had to master in a very short amount of time. He pulled me aside immediately after and told me how thankful he was that he had his team with him for the process, saying, "You have no idea how grateful I am to have people with me that I just feel comfortable around." What I hope Tom realizes is we are the ones saying that to ourselves every day. Those of us who work with Tom are able to be ourselves, excel, and learn from such a great teacher and mentor. We also are able to fail in front of him. We enjoy going to work every day because Tom makes us feel comfortable around him. He makes us feel like colleagues, like family, and we are also very grateful for that. This is a wonderful evening, and this award is a great award, but I know Tom Nolan very well, and I can't imagine anything meaning more to him than this and the comments of our colleagues, and I'll share those with you, Tom, after tonight. Tom is a great lawyer, a great trial lawyer, but he is an even better friend and colleague. Tom is a great man who's made all of our lives a little bit better for knowing him. Marianne, Ryan, Katie, Amy, and Frank. I know it's not easy being the family of a hardworking lawyer. We have placed great demands on Tom's time and his attention. Thank you so much for sharing with us for all these years. Thank you.
Yeah, fabulous speech. Brown Green, last year's honoree, will now present the Excellence in Advocacy Award to Tom Nolan. Brown began practice on his own in 1973 with 8 cases and sleeping in his car. He has had a 41-year string, over 100 jury trials, with verdicts in excess of $1 million, often for catastrophic injuries. Along the way, Brown has mentored 2 generations of trial lawyers. Green, Burlett, and Wheeler has produced more consumer attorneys presidents and more trial lawyers of the year than any other firm. Please welcome Brown Green.
It is quite an honor to stand on such an evening with such a story, such a unique, wonderful, warm American story as Tom Nolan and Art Gilbert. We stand tonight, actually, in this beautiful room with the swirl of controversy with ISIL and politics and various stories. And here we are in this quiet, beautiful feeling of a noble profession. And I feel so honored to be part of it. I just do. And to hear the story of Tom and Art. And all of us, we're all swept up in this. This goes back 500 years. Shakespeare, of course, wrote about that when he said that in things in law, strive mightily, and thereafter eat and drink as friends. That's what lawyers do, judges. We tonight share hands and experiences with these wonderful people, and we're all part of this. We kind of struggle to attain and think that we could have a family and we could have experiences quite like this, but we do. Maybe not in the same degree, but we share that. I've talked to people about Tom, not Tom Girardi, for example. Tom said, if Tom Nolan offers you $100, take it. Art Gilbert, we all know. As a friend, Justice, raconteur, jazz pianist, man about town, husband of Barbara. Tom, I didn't know you until tonight. I knew you by reputation, but that's the purest way to know anyone. It's that indefinable thing that's out there that is so true, good or bad, and yours is sparkling. And I've heard about it for years. And everything that people spoke of you tonight speaks of that. And so I'm just so pleased to have a small part in this. And please come up and take what you have coming to you.
It's always a daunting task to recognize that you're the only thing that stands between getting to the valet before everybody else. Brown, thank you so much for those gracious comments. It is true that we've not had the privilege to break bread, although your reputation precedes you, and it's quite profound to accept this award from you. I want to recognize, of course, all of the hard work of the Beverly Hills Bar Association, Jonathan, Mark, Linda. Thank you for all the efforts. It's really, really a spectacular effort that leads to tonight. But I want to share something with you, if I could, because, God, it sucks being on the same panel with Justice Gilbert. I've got to tell you. But there's a lot of parallels. I took trombone in grade school. I was taught by Catholic nuns who thought that music would add culture to one's life, so I took trumpet. No, my brother took trumpet, I took trombone, and I was terrible at that. I can play heart and soul on the piano, and I've been to Disney Hall once. But I will tell you this in seriousness. about Justice Gilbert. I was an advocate in front of him. It says something about Justice Gilbert. It also says something special about the law firm that I work with, Skadden Arps. Got a call from a friend whose son played on the national championship soccer team for the University of California at Santa Barbara. They had just won the national championship. However, a friend on the team had been arrested and convicted for a horrific crime, sexual assault of a co-ed. They asked me whether or not I would consider possibly stepping in. The briefs had already been filed. We had a reply brief that would ultimately get filed in the Court of Appeal. I don't know where we were going on vacation, Marianne, but I took the transcripts of the trial and read the trial transcript, and I actually convinced myself that this gentleman was innocent and the trial had not gone as well as it could. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm a dad. I have two beautiful daughters. I have two sisters. Why in the world would I get involved in a case of such charges? But then I thought about it, talked to some of my colleagues, and we agreed. But I needed to call New York to get permission. And you know, I know that there's an issue about big law and what do they stand for and what have you. But I will never forget the conversation that I had with our managing partner when I explained the case to him. I said, I'd like to do it. And he said, why wouldn't you? And I said, well, publicity. He said, it sounds like this young man needs the best defense. And if we can do it, let's do it. And we worked tirelessly. We put a brief together. And Justice Gilbert, I am honored that you would recall that argument, and we've talked about it. And I am appreciative of the fact that we kept you up late at night. The result was probably the right one. We lost. But here's the punchline, Justice Gilbert. I had to go back to prison to meet with Eric, to tell him that we lost. But I was able to tell him that we really, really had a shot at justice. And that Lady Justice stayed up at night to try to figure out a way to get it right. And although we finished in the second place on that argument, you never get that moment, Justice Gilbert, to see in a prison, to be able to tell a client, you had a fair shot. And I thank you for that. And I thank all of the judges who labor so hard on such difficult cases. So I really appreciate that. You also remind me, of a great mentor that I had. I went to law school at night. I often say it's because Harvard didn't have a night school, or Yale didn't have a night school. So I ended up going to Loyola that had a night school. It was convenient, so I thought I would go there. But I had the great blessing to, I needed a job. And so on the first day, I applied for student aid. And I remember the intake person, after looking at my application, suggested that I should immediately start working in the library that day. Obviously, she wondered if I had enough money to get home for gas. But I got a call, and I was able to get to work at the Court of Appeal. And so for those of you who know this, for 4 years, I worked for the clerk to Otto Kaus, who was a legend. And he had the wit, he had the intellect, and he had the drive, Justice Gilbert, that you did. I I tried to read all of your articles in the Daily Journal. I didn't get all the way through the 250, and certainly didn't even try the 4,000 cases if you decided, but I will tell you this one thing. You are a gift to the legal community, and you enrich all of us, and you enrich me, and I'm humbled to share the stage with you tonight. When you get as old as I am, and you work at a law firm as large as I do, you often get invited to appear on panels. And so I'm not uncomfortable speaking in front of a group, but normally I'm asked to talk about an assignment. How do you do closing arguments? How do you do cross-examinations? Today, for those of you who know me well enough, this one threw me for a loop because there's no assignment. They want you to talk about your life path and how you got here. So let me, if I could, just bore you with a couple of thoughts. Okay? And maybe they will resonate with you, but I don't belong here. I was not destined to ever be the recipient of this type of an award. Destined maybe to be an okay dad. And I'm proud that if you judge me on anything else, whether or not it's $1 billion verdicts or whatever, I'll be satisfied if you judge me on the character of my 3 children. Ryan, Katie, and Amy. They're spectacular people, but they're also spectacular for a different reason. I have been on the road so often pursuing this goal to try to be the very best I could be, while leaving behind a loving family. And there have been too many baseball games, Ryan, that I missed in high school. Katie, too many softball games that I got late to. Amy, the volleyball tournaments that I couldn't make. The times when I'd have to talk to you on the phone about 9/11 because I was trying a case in San Francisco, or because of graduation in high school because I was trying the Bratz trial. But the spectacular thing about my children is they never made me feel as though I should be anywhere else but in the courtroom fighting for a client. And I've been blessed by that. And I've been blessed also by an amazing wife for the past 25 years. Marianne, if you know her, she's quite the backseat driver. It's really more than that. She's a backseat driver for me my entire life. She makes every decision that I need to make. But in all seriousness, she's done such a great job with the girls. I was also fortunate to be married to Ryan's mother for 10 years. We had our own private celebration last evening at Joselito's in Montrose. It was those early years that also formed a very important part of my life. It's where I met Jack Girardi, a very, very dear friend. And to answer a question that you will all be asking, and please don't email me, there is an ad in the tribute book that has a picture of the Dallas cheerleaders. Jack was having heart valve surgery 35 years ago, and we both had caught on TV the Dallas cheerleaders and thought they were rather attractive, and I thought, well, what could I do for Jack in the hospital? And so I sent him some flowers with a picture of the Dallas cheerleaders autographed. And it's a testament to friendship that 35 years later, that same picture appears in a tribute book to me. Anonymous, but anyway, it was Jack Girardi. So why do we do this? Why Brown was eloquent about Oh, I have to say something else about Brown Green. The irony that I'm getting this award from Brown Green, I'm absolutely stone colorblind. So to get this award from a gentleman by the name of Brown Green, as I mentioned to someone today, thank God his parents didn't name him Red Green, because I wouldn't be able to pick you out of the audience. But throughout my life, I've been blessed with people that are always willing to try to make me look better. And along the way, I've had so many great colleagues. I have so many great partners today. I don't want to go down a list of all of them because I'll exclude something. But certainly, you're enriched when you have friends like Joanne Lishman. You're enriched when you have a friend like Jack DeCanio. But you're also enriched when you have the ability to work with people who have been by your side for so long. And I would be remiss in not calling out a couple of people. One, I have a legal assistant, Becky Isamoto, who's been with me for so long through so many trials. I want to tell you something about Becky because I think tonight is about telling the truth. Becky, if you work on a case with Becky for me, she will tell you a secret. So don't tell anybody about this. You need to make 3 copies of a document if you give it to Tom. One is the first document he'll take home or he'll take it to the hotel room, and he will lose it or he'll forget it. The second document, another copy of it, you'll give to Tom when he gets to court or when he comes into the office. Invariably, I'll lose that walking into the courtroom. And when I stand up to do an opening statement or a closing argument, I will not have a copy of the document, swearing that somebody stole it. And Becky just turns around and she has the last copy. And so Becky, for all the things that you've put aside in your life to make me look better over these years, I really appreciate it. Aaron Shore is legendary in any trial. He's what they would call my technician. Actually, he really is amazing. And Aaron joined me, I don't know, 1997. It's been an amazing trip, and he's been with me on all these trials. We picked up Steve Lybrand in the WorldCom case. He's a jury consultant. He's actually my therapist because he's always wanting to know, Tom, what do you think the meaning of this case should be? What story should we tell the jury? And sometimes I want to just say, God damn it, Steve, just shut up. Let's just talk. I'll just explain it to the jury the way I want. But he'll say, no, Tom, let's just talk. He's usually the last person I talk to when I'm in trial, whether or not it's 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And the last shout out I want to give tonight is to Diane, my secretary, my assistant, who I don't know what I would do if I didn't be able to come to work and have Diane working with me. And when people ask me, how much longer are you going to do this? I said, please ask Diane how much longer she has till retirement. But a couple of other things, though, and I know the time is late, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you and share with you that my hero is here tonight, and it's my brother. You heard the story that some 60 years ago, Frank and I and my 2 sisters received the devastating news that my father had died at the age of 39 of a heart attack, which just was like stunning. And there was a conversation that one of our uncles had in the house and said, to Frank and I, Frank was the older brother, said, you're the men of the house. The next day, Frank woke me up and he said, I've got to go downstairs. And we immediately fired the gardener, asserting our control and authority over the future course of life. And so people ask me, do you have a specialty? Why don't you just do contingency work? Why don't you? And I think it's actually because when you are dealt a card like that, you really have 2 choices. And one is to say, geez, this is really tough. Don't really have a lot of future here and what have you. And if I probably was the only child, I may have ended up, I don't know, working at Ralph's or whatever. But my brother was always the leader, someone I could always look to, always dependable, better looking, ran faster, was a better baseball player, better in law school, in school than I did. Became a doctor, phenomenal doctor. But through the years, we've been very, very close. And we've both been battling for, I think, one thing in our life. And the answer actually came to me, Frank, and I haven't told you this, but for all of you who have seen this movie, The Judge, I don't know if you've seen it, Robert Duvall, Robert Downing Jr. It's an amazing story, good trial, father-son relationship. But when you have two boys who only know their father because you could file a Freedom of Information Act request and pick up the FBI file, you struggle. You want that. You want that acknowledgement that you're okay. You've done pretty well. And there's this wonderful scene at the end of the movie. Robert Duvall has been released from jail on a compassion leave, and they're out fishing on the boat. And he had been, Robert Downing Jr. had asked him earlier, father was a judge, Dad, who was the best lawyer you'd ever seen? And Robert Downing Jr. was desperately hoping that Robert Duvall would say, it's you. You are. But he gave some other name. But in this last scene, just moments before his death, Robert Duvall, in a non sequitur, because this is really what was in the conversation, he whispers the word, you are, to Robert Downing Jr. You are the best lawyer. And Frank, what I'd like to do tonight is in one way share this with you and say that we've both been enormously blessed by a strong family, a strong mother who gave us the character, the drive, the values. You've probably, I hopefully had patients who have lived that probably nobody thought they would have ever lived. I've certainly won cases that nobody thought should have been won, not because of my skill, but I think actually when God took our dad, there was a covenant that was made, which was, hey, take care of these kids. And so when I win cases that I shouldn't, I think there's also because someone's got their finger on the scale of justice. But Frank, tonight, with you here, it's very special. And I'd like to think that Dad is saying to both of us, you are. You're the best doctor, and I came out pretty good as a lawyer because I work with incredible colleagues. I work with a great law firm. I've had some amazing luck, but largely because people will work tirelessly to make certain that justice prevails, and I've had tremendous clients. So thank you. I appreciate you letting me share with you these personal moments. They mean a lot to me. It means a lot for all of you to be here, for all of my partners to be here. I work with the greatest firm in the world, Skadden Arps. Measure Skadden by the story of David Springer calling me and asking me to handle the case in Newark. Not the most popular type of case for big law. Measure Skadden by the Eric Frimpong case, where we can keep Justice Gilbert up at night trying to figure out whether or not justice should be served with a retrial. God bless you all. Thank you for my family, for my friends. This is a moment and this is an evening I will not soon forget. Thank you very much.